Hey everybody, and thanks for clicking on this video and checking out my channel, and joining me for another MCU review. Leading up to Avengers Endgame, I've been going through all the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies in preparation for the big event, and if you'd like to join me for this journey, I welcome you to do so, and I'd love for you to do so. Just add all your thoughts and opinions about these movies down in the comment section below, and let's get a fun conversation going. And if you have been joining me for this journey, thank you so much. We are so close to finishing up the MCU. Endgame is only a few days away, and we're going to get closer today by completing the Thor trilogy with Thor Ragnarok. If you'd like to talk about this movie with me, I welcome you to do so, and I'd love for you to do so down in the comment section below, and let's get a fun conversation going. And with all that out of the way, let's talk about Thor Ragnarok. So Thor Ragnarok this time around is directed by Taika Waititi. When his sister Hela is released from her imprisonment, Thor must protect Asgard from her wrath. But after getting trapped on the planet of Sakaar, Thor must fight one of his old allies in the Hulk in order to get back home. So if you watch my reviews for the first two Thor movies, you know that I actually like those movies. But they ranked low on a lot of people's MCU lists, myself included. So Marvel and Taika Waititi decided to take the third installment in the Thor franchise in a completely different direction, and they really abandoned everything that Thor and Thor the Dark World set up in the Shakespearean type world and feel and dialect that they created, and they turned this movie completely into a comedy. And for a lot of franchises, that might be really difficult for the audience to adjust to, but because the Thor movies were not resonating with audiences as much, the tonal and directional shift that they take this movie in to make it a comedy really hit with audiences, really hit with critics. And watching this movie back again, it really is clear why, because this movie is so much fun. Thor Ragnarok is such a blast. After watching it back again, this is one of the most fun movies in the MCU. So let's talk about Thor himself. Thor has been completely revamped in this movie. The serious Shakespearean kind of take on Thor is kind of abandoned and left behind in this movie, and he has so much new life and energy and personality thrust into his character. The moment this movie starts, they really set up the tone for what this movie is going to be and the Thor that we're going to get. When he's talking to Surtur, and he's threatening Thor with the destruction of Asgard, and Thor just starts cracking jokes to Surtur, and as he's wrapped up in this chain and the chain starts spinning around, it's a really funny exchange between Thor and Surtur. And it's a completely different exchange with this Thor than we would have gotten in the last two Thor movies. He would have taken it more seriously. Here, he's just cracking jokes. He really has like a childlike essence to him. And you can just tell that Chris Hemsworth is having a blast in this role in this movie. As well as everybody else, you can tell that everyone is having a fun time in this movie. Taika Waititi has said that a lot of the script was actually improvised from the actors themselves. That he let them improvise for their characters for a lot of this movie. And it really comes through. The actors' personalities really seep into their characters, and you really see all of their personalities come through in their characters. Tom Hiddleston as Loki, Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner, Chris Hemsworth as Thor. All of these characters that we've known for so many years in the MCU, they kind of all get a fresh life put into them because these actors' personalities are really coming through in their improvisation. And what they're improvising works for their characters, but it's also really funny and it's different for their characters than we've seen before. Bruce Banner in this movie really gets to be kind of goofy and silly, more so than he was in Avengers Age of Ultron. And you can really kind of see the sense of humor that Mark Ruffalo has coming through in Bruce Banner in this movie, as well as in the Hulk, because he voices the Hulk in this movie. And I love the segments on Sakaar with Thor and Hulk in this movie. I love the fight that they have at the Gladiator Arena, headed up by Jeff Goldblum's character of the Grand Master. And Jeff Goldblum, even in this movie, you see a lot of Jeff Goldblum come through because all of the Jeff Goldblumisms come out. The eccentric weirdo that we all love of Jeff Goldblum comes through very clear in the Grand Master, and he's a really fun character as well. But what I love about the Thor and Hulk segments is that we find out Hulk has actually been Hulk for 2 years since he's landed on Sakaar from the end of Age of Ultron. Which the Quinjet coming through space and crashing on this planet is a little far-fetched, but I can buy it because of the tone that this movie has, and it kind of just fits in the tone and in the world of this movie. But I love that in this movie, Hulk really becomes his own character. He's really like a big child. Because he's been on Sakaar for 2 years, he kind of has the mentality of a really young child, and you get to see more of the Hulk's personality of who the Hulk is come through in this movie. And it's really a new take and a new perspective on the Hulk in this universe, because before he was always just the big green monster that Bruce Banner turned into. He wasn't really his own thing. But in this movie, with him being able to talk and kind of show his personality, what's going on in the mind of Hulk, is really cool. I really like that they did that. And Thor and Hulk in this movie are like an unlikely pairing that you would think to have in the MCU, but they work really well. The banter between Hulk and Thor in this movie is great, and the banter between Chris Hemsworth and Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner and Thor is really good as well. It really is like a buddy adventure through a lot of this movie. And those two actors just have a really great chemistry together. I love watching those characters together in this movie. And I feel that those actors really help to elevate each other's performances. And the stuff on Sakaar not only gets us that fun Hulk and Thor dynamic, but we also get introduced to new characters as Valkyrie and Korg, who are now like fan favorites, and I like these characters a lot. Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie is so awesome. They kind of show how she has this kind of dark and depressing past that she's kind of buried down, she's not dealing with. She's depicted as like an alcoholic, and she kind of uses alcoholism to forget about her tragic past. But she just fits in really well with the dynamic of Hulk and Thor. And those three characters together really work well together. I can't wait to see Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson in the new Men in Black movie coming out, because in this movie they have great chemistry. They're really funny together. I can only imagine how that Men in Black movie is going to be, with the two of them starring in it as the lead roles. And Cate Blanchett as the villain of Hela is actually one of the better MCU villains in my opinion. From the minute she comes on screen, she really shows you the stakes of what this villain is going to be and how much of a threat she really is to Asgard. And she's kind of the one that brings all of the drama into the movie, because with the scenes of her on Asgard, it really reveals a lot of Asgard's history. It's dark history that's not talked about in the other Thor movies that we find out that Odin actually kind of hid. And I find that stuff really interesting to get a peek behind the curtain of what Asgard was really like and how Odin really was as a leader. And the motivation of Hela, where she helped Odin achieve all this stuff and then was completely abandoned by him because she wanted to do more, but he suddenly had a change of heart. And she feels really hurt and rejected by that, and anger comes out in that. I think that gives the character a really great motivation. And Cate Blanchett has a really great presence, and she's a great threat to Thor in this movie. And this movie, at its heart, is really a comedy. It's kind of actually a dark comedy because they don't shy away from all the death in this movie. There's a lot of death in this movie, there's a lot of people dying, there's a lot of destruction. But it's all played off as jokes. None of the death is taken seriously. And everything is played off as jokes, but it really works. The jokes in this movie really hit. This movie is really funny. There wasn't really that many jokes in this movie that fell flat. I can maybe think of one or two that fell flat for me, but for the most part, I was laughing throughout this entire movie. Even watching it again, I was laughing throughout the entire movie. This movie has great rewatchability to it. The only negative I really have about this movie is that the first half an hour feels like it's really rushing trying to connect us to the other two Thor movies. Because at the end of Thor the Dark World, we see that Loki has actually impersonated Odin and has taken over Asgard. Basically, it was promised to be a big thing for the third Thor movie. But in this movie, it's kind of brushed over. Thor doesn't actually care that much about it. He kind of figures it out within the first 10 minutes of this movie, and it's kind of really quick to get over it and brush it off. While it's cool to see Doctor Strange in this movie, Doctor Strange is really shoehorned in. And the reason he's in this movie is so Thor and Loki can locate where Odin is. But I feel like there was a smoother way to do that. You didn't really have to bring Doctor Strange into the story. The only reason Doctor Strange is in this movie is because Doctor Strange is the newest recruit to the MCU. I feel like he was only put in this movie so that he could have the connection to Thor and to the Avengers. But for the most part, I don't feel like his scene was necessary in this movie. It's a fun scene, it's a cool scene, it's cool to see Doctor Strange in there. But every time I watch it, it does feel shoehorned in. It doesn't feel like it needs to be there. It definitely just feels like they just wanted to try and get Doctor Strange a bigger presence in this universe. And also, there's kind of a lazy line where when Thor and Loki first go to Earth, these girls take pictures with Thor, and one of them says, "I'm sorry to hear Jane dumped you." And I'm just kind of like, Thor and Jane's relationship was never really in the public eye, so how does that girl know about Jane? It was obviously a line put in there just to tell us, the audience, that Jane would not be in this movie and that her and Thor were split up. But I don't know, it feels really lazy to me to have just some random extra girl say to Thor, "Hey, sorry Jane broke up with you," when I'm like, how would she know that him and Jane were even together? Like, Thor and Jane weren't featured on like People magazine or anything. So I don't know, it just came across as a really kind of lazy way to do that to me. And like I said, this movie kind of does away with all the Shakespearean dialect and stuff that was set up in the first two Thor movies. But one thing that they do kind of keep alive is the family drama aspect of the movies. Because the Thor movies have always been about a family drama. In the first Thor movie, even in the Avengers and in Thor 2, it's about Thor and Loki's dysfunctional relationship. And the family drama aspect is within that relationship. But they kind of do a reconciliation in this movie. They kind of wrap that story up with Odin and Loki and Thor in this movie. And it's a really nice, sweet moment between Odin and Loki and Thor when Odin's about to die and looking over the cliff's end at the ocean. And then there's another nice moment between Thor and Loki in an elevator where Thor kind of accepts that him and Loki are never going to be the way that they were. And it's a nice kind of reconciliation between these characters. Kind of a nice conclusion to their arc, to their feud. But they still keep the family drama aspect alive in this movie by introducing it with Hela. And now Thor having to fight his sister that he never knew he had. That's kind of where the family drama aspect of this movie still stays alive. And the family drama aspect with Thor and Hela is still the focus of the story, but it's not so heavy on the drama and heavy-handed as it was in Thor 1 and Thor the Dark World with Thor and Loki. It's the focus of the story, but it's surrounded by a comedy. And I feel like the comedy and the family drama aspect of the story work really well together. The comedy might overshadow the family drama a little bit, but it's still there. I feel like it never gets lost, and I'm able to enjoy both parts of the story. And guys, in the end, like many people, I love Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok is so much fun. It takes a character that was kind of getting stale in audiences' eyes and revamps him, But what I like about the revamping of Thor is even though he's more humorous, he's got more sense of humor, and he's way funnier than he was in the past, he still feels like the same character. They kept the character intact. It doesn't feel like a completely different character. When he has to be serious about something, he gets serious. When there's a moment that requires him to be serious, he takes it seriously. He's not a complete goofball throughout the entire movie. And that's what I think really works about the revamping of Thor. It still feels consistent with what we've seen before. It's just a fresh take on something that we're so familiar with and was something that was getting kind of tired. Taika Waititi took a franchise that was getting kind of bland in audience's eyes and cranked the fun up to 11 with Thor Ragnarok. But even though it's a different tone and a different direction for the franchise, it still feels like it fits into the Thor trilogy fairly well by completing character arcs and bringing conclusions to conflicts that were set up in the first two films. And it's easily my favorite of the Thor movies. It probably goes Thor Ragnarok, Thor, then Thor the Dark World. Anyway guys, that's all I have to say about Thor Ragnarok, but what do you think about Thor Ragnarok? Where do you rank it of the 3 Thor movies? Comment down below, let me know. I want to know all your thoughts and opinions about this movie. Guys, we're only a few days away from Endgame, and we're only 3 movies away from completing the MCU. And I'm going to be back soon talking more MCU movies, all the way up to the release of Avengers Endgame. And if you'd like to join me to end this journey, I welcome you to do so, and I'd love for you to do so. Just put all your thoughts and opinions about these movies down in the comment section below, and let's get a fun conversation going. Guys, thanks again for clicking on this video and checking out my channel. Once again, my name's Zachary Milne. Thank you for talking movies with me, and hope you have yourself a great day.